the next presentation, which is also about, the Arab Spring, especially about the case of Tunisia. And we'll come back to this discussion, Raza. We'll have some time later in the session also. Our next presentation is by Amel Azzouz. She is a PhD researcher in political economy and teacher of English language and literature in Tunisian University. Formerly, she is also Secretary of State in charge of international cooperation in the Tunisian government, and she was the member of Tunisian National Constituent Assembly, which was formed after the revolution or Arab Spring in Tunisia, as they call it. Amel is going to speak on the, her title of presentation is End of Democracy in Tunisia with a question mark. So we did not drop it. And I think in Raza's, your case also, it was unintentional to drop the question mark. But over to you, Amel. Can you please share your video?
I'm so sorry. Could you allow me because I'm trying, just a minute. I think you should allow me the camera, the video from your side, Ali.
Yeah, you have, you are
yes,
the co-host.
I've been working on my laptop, and so it's not my laptop. I lost my I lost the page, and now I'm obliged to use my phone. So I'm using my phone. Could you please? I'm just pressing the button of starting the video, but in vain. Okay, Can you do something from your phone?
Yeah,
Ali?
let me try. Give me a minute. Yeah, let me try that, because you were previously a co-host. Yeah. From my side, you are the co-host already, Amel. So can you, from my admin panel, you are co-host.
Yeah, because I've been connecting from another from the laptop. I think this is the problem. That's why. It's not mine. Okay. I didn't know how to manage, so I moved immediately to my phone so that you won't waste time.
Yeah. I can. Let me try. Well, in my panel, you are seen as co-host, Amel, and I have not stopped videos access from my side. So I frankly do not.
Okay, can you give me 1 minute? I'm gonna try. Someone is here to help me.
Yes.
Huh? 1 minute,
we can
I'll come back to you.
Sure.
Yes, Ali, as far as I can see from looking at the participants list, Amel has the ability, according to this list, to use the video.
Yes. Yeah.
So sorry, I'm coming back soon.
I'm just checking in. Özlem, are you able to share your video and use your microphone? Özlem?
I can use my microphone and I can hear you.
Okay,
and we can see you.
Just wanted to check if everything is all right.
Okay, yes.
We'll be coming to your presentation after Amel's presentation.
All right.
She is just.
Shall I stop my video for better?
Yes, it's up to you. Yeah.
Ali, otherwise, if it is not possible for me to connect through the video, we can have it on audio, if you don't mind, of course.
Yes, of course, you can go ahead, but I see, there's nothing I can do, actually, frankly speaking. You are already the co-host. So I think you should go ahead and start your presentation. I'm sorry, we are going to miss your video. That will be a loss for us, but.
You saw me at the beginning. That's fine. I think.
Yes,
we
saw you at the, yes. Yeah.
Sometimes things happen beyond us. Yes.
But I can hear an echo. Amel, are you signed in with two devices?
Because I still have the laptop here and I've been managing.
Oh, we lost her. Sorry, I think Amel is having some problems with reconnecting. Raza, there is a short question for you. If you,
Yes.
You can answer. Is it true that Husis consider themselves descendants of the Prophet, peace be upon him, and accordingly have the right to rule? Is that correct?
Well, the question is not really relevant to the presentation, but they did not become part of the political process citing their right to rule. They became part of the political process on a very secular thing, which you also appreciate, Ali, which is that the political process in Yemen had absolutely failed to take their grievances into account. I mean, they were pretty placid in their religious practice. They are from a very placid branch of Islam. They did not actually ever they actually never entertained this claim that they have a divine right to rule. It was the imams of the north who basically many years ago who basically claimed divine sanction, but not the Houthis.
Sure.
This is not a religious conflict. Once again, it is a conflict, old-fashioned conflict about democracy and rights, about representation.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for answering that. We have our speaker back in action. Amel, happy to see you back in audio and video. So why don't you start your presentation, Amel, please?
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm happy to be again with you. I'm happy to, and thank you for having me, Ali, again in your conference. It's been now 2 years since I came celebrating the, Salam alaikum, first of all, to everybody. Celebrating the Tunisian constitution, and particularly freedom of religion and freedom of belief in that constitution, because I am one of the, as you mentioned in your introduction, of between inverted commas, the founding mothers of this second republic, if we can call it, in Tunisia. And I'm sorry today to come and talk of because these are revolutions and transitions and democratic transition all over the world that are backward and forward and etc. But the problem is how to deal with what is happening. Your guests have been talking about counter-revolution. We are witnessing a kind of counter-revolution in Tunisia. This is my reading of how things have been taking place recently since the 25th of July. But because maybe our dear listeners and followers do not have a clear idea of the situation in Tunisia before the 25th of July, would you allow me, Ali, a few minutes to have a brief background of the situation in Tunisia. You all know that Tunisia was or has been hated as the only successful Arab democracy to emerge from the Arab Spring, from uprisings of 2011. It has adopted one of the best and most liberal and progressive constitutions, not only in the Arab world, but I dare say in the world. It has also achieved many milestones in terms of number one, human rights and freedoms, basic freedoms, freedom of speech, of the media, of freedom of belief, etc. In terms also of free and fair elections. Two major free and fair legislative and presidential elections were held, 2014 and 2019, in addition to something unprecedented in the history of Tunisia, which is the local elections of 2018. In addition, of course, to the establishment of a representative democracy with the system of check and balances, which is very important. So this is the rosy, if you want, the positive side of the medal of the story. But in every story there is, however, there is another side. And here, you all know that there was a kind of political instability during these 10 years. With 9 prime ministers and 11 governments in the span of the last 10 years, economic stagnation and accumulation of internal and external debts, social unrest, you know, and this is very normal because of this shrinking of people's ability, let's say purchasing ability and purchasing power. Another problem also, the proliferation of corruption, both financial and political corruption. Yesterday I asked your guest, one of your guests, about the informal institutions in the Arab world and the developing countries. Clientelism, nepotism, all of these aspects of political, if you want, corruption are pervasive, you know. In Tunisia, the revolution has done nothing to manage and to deal with the distribution of power, socially speaking and economically speaking. We will see maybe at the end why things like this have happened, why there is no change. But let me first of all continue. I have, how much time do I have, Ali, by the way? I'm sorry to ask this now. 20 minutes, quarter of an hour?
In total 20 minutes, yeah, so you can.
Okay,
yeah.
That's fine. So you see, in a nutshell, democracy in Tunisia failed to deliver. To deliver. Your guest, the guest preceding me, was speaking about the Arab Spring and the causes and the reasons behind the Arab Spring. One word which is a key word in Tunisians' revolution was dignity. And dignity in the way we understand it in Tunisia means especially job, employment, and food on the table. If you don't find this is dignity. So this grim context, there is a grim context, okay? There is, people would ask you, I was myself a deputy, and I was telling them, I'm drafting a constitution. They would say, what shall I do with the constitution? What shall I do with democracy? I want food on the table. So this same question is being repeated now. So within this grim context, this context has understandably fueled frustration. The 10 years, I mean, and disillusionment, and more dangerously, ire and grudge against the political class governing. Unfortunately, also, Mr. Qais Said, the president of the Republic, has taken advantage of these circumstances to do what? To further inflame the public opinion against the political class. Against politicians, against parliamentarians, against judges, against businessmen, especially also against the media. though he himself, he was part of the crisis. He contributed to this vicious circle, this deadlock, this political deadlock, especially during the last years of these last 2 years. Now, this is a brief, let's say, description. Now, the coup itself, the coup on the night of the 25th of July, the president, in a unilateral interpretation of Article 80 of the Constitution, this article very, very briefly says the following, says when there is an imminent danger or imminent peril, the president of the Republic is allowed to take specific or exceptional procedures and measures while consulting with the head of the parliament, and keeping the parliament working and the government working, and at the same time fixing a timeline. Nothing of this was done. In a unilateral interpretation of Article 8, he announced the following: the suspension of the parliament with tanks. He deployed tanks. Tanks were deployed to in front of the parliament. He dissolved the government. There was a sort of power grab. He concentrated powers, if you want, the executive and the judicial and the legislative and the judicial powers in his office. And most importantly, and more dangerously than this, there was no timeline for this. Okay, people were in front of uncertainty, so there was no clear vision of the future of if we can come back to democracy or not, or when these exceptional measures will take an end. 2 months later, exactly in 2 months later, he issued a much more important and more dangerous document, which is the Presidential Decree 117 on the 22nd of September. It's a very condensed document, 23 articles. The most important things in this article, issued by Mr. Said, he expressed a radical break with the Constitution of 2014. And he decided there is a decision to rule by decrees, by presidential decrees. In the Constitution, he kept only the preamble and the first 2 chapters. Why the first 2 chapters? Because they are dealing with freedoms and liberties. Because he was conscious of this resistance of people who would say, no, we won't accept any if you want, he needed to reassure, if you want, those who have been concerned and worried about the respect of liberties guaranteed by Chapter 1 and 2. So he was cautious not to abolish them, which is, of course, which is, between inverted commas, ridiculous, because, you know, these articles 1 and 2, and I was there to one of those who drafted the Constitution, they are but declaration of rights, and the real implementation, the real guarantee of how these rights would be guaranteed in practice by the following articles about the judiciary, about the local authority, about the legislative authority, about the executive authority, about the independent entities. All of these would guarantee how these liberties and freedom would be, citizens would acquire. The decree, the presidential decree, also said something very, very dangerous. He said, it said, if the Constitution and the legal legitimacy goes against people's will, take care, people's will, because we'll go back to the question of populism afterwards. If anything in this Constitution goes against people's will, all procedures should be forsaken, and people's will should be kept, only people's will. And anything also in the Constitution which will contradict this decree number 117, it also, it is not accepted. It means decree 117 is above the Constitution. You know, the Kelsen pyramid was reverted top down. You know, the Constitution normally number 1, and then you have the organic laws, and then decrees. He put the decree number 1, and then he put the Constitution beneath everything else. Of course, it says in brief, Mr. Said, because of this decree 117, he was both. He declared himself both the executor and the legislator. At the beginning, he also put himself and declared himself to be the general prosecutor, but the judges and the judiciary, they called him into order. So he retreated back a little bit and he declared himself only general counselor of the military courts only. So the coup in practice now, from the first days, I call this as a coup. Now that's on paper, on documents. In practice, how was this translated? He suspended, as I said, all of those state institutions, and then he suspended the work of independent entities, which were, of course, stated by the constitution, such as the entity for the fighting corruption, number one, the entity for checking the constitutionality of the laws, which is supposed to replace the constitutional court, because we have not yet finished, and Mr. Said was responsible for this. We have not yet established the constitutional court. He also tried a few days after this, he started raising his voice against the high independent entity or committee for elections, EZ, we call it in Tunisia, EZ. This is very dangerous, you know, all of these, because it is precisely here that liberties and freedoms are compromised. At first, Mr. Said's measures were accepted and welcomed by large segments of Tunisian society who rejected the way liberal democracy was practiced. Who, as I said earlier, were disillusioned because they thought they made a revolution to have food on the table. However, the revolution didn't bring food on the table. So you saw on the screens people coming out on the streets and celebrating. However, this is waning bit by bit, because the outcome has been paralysis. You know, up to now, there is that paralysis. And quickly, this enthusiasm evolved into a sort of fear and uncertainty. More than 3 months now, okay, there is a government, and if you will ask me questions about it, because I didn't like to include this in my paper, there is a real fear and uncertainty of the future. Mr. Said, to my mind, of course, is destroying the very idea of democracy since July 2025. The real danger is that Mr. Said is preparing the ground for any dictatorship, for the return of dictatorship. There is something else. The coup was translated in practice by something very, very dangerous, which is the army. The Tunisian army has always been apolitical. It has never been involved in politics, and this is a plus. This is one of the factors which helped the Tunisians succeed in the revolution, contrary to Egypt, for example, or to other Arab countries. It has always been apolitical and not involved in politics. Mr. Said, and this is very dangerous, he employed the army to implement his coup, just from the first, even before the coup. He was preparing for this with the army. On the 25th now, he claimed as I said, the judicial power for himself, but he was quickly called into order. However, he can still have the control over military justice, and he found niches through which he controls justice in general. Now, the civil liberties, it's your network, Islam and Liberty. Let me speak a little bit of civil liberties. Although,
I'm sorry for the interruption. You have about 5 minutes to conclude.
yeah. Only this is five minutes. Although there is no systematic repression, we cannot speak of systematic repression of the opposition of the coup. But the sum and the continuity of repressive incidents every day, we have people we have banned from traveling, people, ordinary citizens, businessmen, politicians, parliamentarians prevented from traveling. We have house arrests, we have civilian people being tried in front of military courts. So this is how there is a real fear and concern with liberties. Now, is democracy threatened? That's the answer. Yes, democracy is seriously threatened. Qais Said excluded different national forces, unions, NGOs, parties. He doesn't believe in dialogue. He doesn't believe in consultation with those. He refused any sort of consultation with these. Tunisia today is at a very dangerous crossroads and a critical financial and economic social situation. However, there are glimpses of hope. And I finish here, Ali, if you don't mind. There are glimpses of hope, of course. Otherwise, if we don't have hope, we don't have life. Protests have not stopped against the coup, are growing both in size and number. Even those who agreed with Mr. Said's exceptional measures at the beginning, they are now growing impatient and suspicious with his perceived silence on how he will move forward, how he will deal with the situation. Civil society at the beginning, entities, they were very hesitant. Now, they didn't take a stand. Now, they are strongly calling for a participatory approach and warning against monopolizing power and decision-making. There is a growing consciousness of the necessity of a front which gathers both politicians, civil societies, trade unions. However, and I finish here, the situation, the balance of power, I'm sorry, in Tunisia today is not clear. It is open. The situation in Tunisia is open to all possibilities. We can have Mr. Qais Said's populist autocratic project may succeed, especially with the spread of populism and the way he speaks to people with a speech full of hatred and dividing the Tunisian people. There are scenarios for a solution coming from those opposing him, but nothing is clear cut. You cannot really say that things are going this side or the other side. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Amel. I think that was a quite updated presentation about the current situation in Tunisia. It's sort of well connected with the earlier presentation, which was more historical, focused on Yemen, but broadly also on the Arab region. So thank you for taking time to analyze and sharing your thoughts on